assunto agora é privacidade. Tópico importantíssimo, já que agora temos vigente a nossa Lei Geral de Proteção de Dados. Se a sua empresa é associada à MMA e quer saber mais sobre isso, chama a gente que temos um conteúdo bem legal para fazer uma apresentação customizada para o seu time. Mas dando sequência à nossa programação, eu chamo agora o meu amigo John deTar, CEO da ROIX e Global Data Bank. O gringo mais brasileiro que conheço vai falar um pouco mais para a gente sobre esse tema. Bem-vindo, John!
Hi, my name is John deTar. I'm with a company called Global Data Bank and ROIX, and the MMA was gracious enough to invite me today to have a conversation with you guys about some things around data. So the title of this is, how we transverse our way through this new revolution of privacy, and how we can make that work with our businesses today, and how we can do it in the right way. I'm going to go in English, obviously. Eu posso falar um pouco português, mas é melhor para mim em inglês, tá bom? So let's go. Vamos lá. The revolution in privacy and what's going in privacy doesn't really have anything to do with the laws, believe it or not. LGPD, GDPR, CCPA. So if you came or you're listening to understand how it reflects back in the laws, this isn't about that. This is 100% about trust and how you build trust with your data, with your consumer, and the ways that you do things in the marketplace. So this is about trust. However, if you follow this four-step process we're going to talk about today, you don't have to worry about the data laws, because the data laws you'll be in compliance of. So let's go forward and let's talk about consumer trust, how you build trust. Trust is the most important thing to any brand or any company, building that with the client. Who's the hardest person for you to sell? The hardest person to get someone to buy your product or anything in life is someone you just lost trust with. It's impossible to bring them back. It takes time, it takes effort. And trust, as far as brands have been concerned, has been what they have done for years and years. Back when I was young, before digital, it was all back then about how they build the relationship and trust. It was done through customer service. It was done through really creative television commercials or radio. And they built the brand, they built the trust. Today's world, it's more complicated than that. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about that in regards to two things, data and media. Global Data Bank and ROIX have been in this market for 10 years in Brazil. We've always been about first-party data and about media. So we have some experience in that, and we're going to talk about how that experience plays into where the market is today in this ever-changing world of data, and how it plays into what you can do in order to be successful in that. So, interesting numbers. This shows that there was a survey done, and lots of surveys done, that show the same type of results. 73% of the people, more than any other area in the survey, said the number one thing that they were most concerned about was how their data was being managed, their privacy within a company, more than if the product they were using worked or not. Incredible. We'd never seen any numbers like that until this last year. This was done in early 2020. So you're seeing that the end user, and the reason we're getting to these laws, by the way, is because the end user, the consumer, feels like we are abusing them when it comes to data. Another survey that was just released recently, it's not in our slides, was released by the WFA. And what the WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers, which is 120 plus of the largest advertisers in the world, they do all kinds of things with surveys and other things. And they, their CMOs said that 73 or 74% of the CMOs said that trust and data and what you do with data to keep that trust will be a priority for them going the next 5 years. So you're seeing that even the chief marketing officers of these biggest corporations of the world understand that you have to be expedient and you have to be trustworthy with the data that you're using. So it's not about legal, it's about moral. And actually, if you see that this is the new normal, you'll realize and companies will come to experience that privacy and data equals better business. It builds that relationship with the consumer. And we're going to get into how all those pieces work. So the first step of the 4 steps is understanding where it is now, actually understanding your data, how your data works. And this is the first step is probably the most important, and yet it's the one that people don't do, that companies don't do, that nobody is doing. And the reason that we got into doing it is because when we started to build our compliant media product, we had to go work with the publishers and the advertisers to understand their data flow, to make sure that the water, the data, what they were passing to us was clean, that it worked, that it fit inside of the laws for us to be able to use it to create a compliant media product. And in doing that, we actually built a product that helps both publishers and advertisers to look at their data flow. This is something really interesting that most people are not doing, and they need to. So you need to analyze your proprietary data, and you need to evaluate the risks that go with that data. Here you're going to see something that's very interesting. This is the actual flow of one of the largest advertisers in the world and their site, which is the consumer-facing site where they talk to the consumer and where most of their data and where most of their impressions for first-party data are collected. What you're going to see here is that, well, let me tell you a little backstory. So we were told before we went to see them that they have spent millions of dollars on making data safety and data a priority, and that we were probably wasting our time, which was a nice way of telling us that we were wasting their time. But they set up a 30-minute meeting with us, and we went in to see them, and it ended up being a little over 2 hours. And the reason why is because when we showed them the actual flow of their data, they had no idea. They have all kinds of regulations and the contracts and different things with different people, but the reality is that their data was going way farther and being spread way deeper than they ever expected. It's called piggybacking, or it's called data leakage, or it's called a whole bunch of things. But their data was ending up in places it shouldn't be, and literally their data was being available and made available through third-party data sellers to be able to purchase on the marketplace. And in fact, some cases they were even buying their own data back when they're buying third-party data of their own for the segments that they were collecting in. But worse than that, if you look at the highlighted red area, you can barely see OneTrust under there, and OneTrust is fine. OneTrust is a consent management platform, but it's put in the wrong place. So what is happening in this data flow of this largest advertiser, or one of the largest advertisers in the world, is that all the data is being passed before the consumer even has a chance to decide whether they want to participate or not. So in other words, the consent management platform is useless in this case. It should be right after the URL. It should be where the consumer gets the first choice. So now the consumer thinks they have a choice, but in reality that data has already been passed. And they had no idea. But it turns out that in over 3,000 URLs that we have tracked over the last year, in 68% of the cases, the CMP is put in the wrong place. It's put in the wrong place because the IT guys, they're told to put in a CMP. They don't know the reasons why. They put it up and they don't think about the flow, or they don't have this flow. We built these products together to be able to create this flow so that we could give a data safety index or risk to the advertiser. In this case, this advertiser has a high risk at 1.8. And the reason they have a high risk is because their data is being passed and passed and passed. I actually, as a joke at one point to one dot and say, that's my mother in northern Michigan collecting your data for me. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm kidding. But it could be, because the data's flow is so wide and so vast. So we helped this company understand that even though they'd spent millions of dollars, they never went to check what the data flow looks like. We are doing this right now with a lot of the members of the WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers, and they've picked us to help them, to help their constituents understand data flow. It's not a difficult process, but it's one that has to be done. And we created this DSI index to be able to do that. And I'm going to show you a little bit more of that in a minute. This right here, this bagunza, this is the publisher. This is American. This is the American site of this publisher. They're owned by one of the biggest companies, corporations in the world. They told me that they had total control. They knew what they were doing with data. And when you see this, I can't even chart it because it's such a big mess. This data is ending up everywhere. And after we were able to show them what their risk was, both against any types of data laws, but also where that piggybacking and data leakage was occurring, they came back and now they're working on cleaning those different pieces up. One for publisher, one for advertisers, and the index helps them do that. So what we do is we create a data safety index. We go in, we actually can look across industries, and we created a tool that people who use it can go in and they can take a look at across industries what it looks like. They can drill into the regions, right down to look at how the regions are done. They can even compare against their competitors how their data safety index is working. This is really key for them to understand how they're stacking up. In some cases, we have advertisers who have a super high data safety index. They have no problem, but they have a bigger problem, is that they're not using what they have in their power to collect the first-party data they could. So you have one instance where they're off the charts and created a huge risk, and the other instance where they're off the chart but they're not doing enough with their data. So this helps them understand how that works. So actually what you end up doing is you end up not reaching the expectations of the user because you're not doing things in the proper way, and you're exposing your company and your company's data for third-party sale or whatever it might be, or even at some type of legal risk. And this process tries to help do that. The second step in this is respect the consumer, respect the user. Understand that they want more transparency. They want to build a relationship with you that's fair. The only reason that we're having these data laws today is because we didn't. And it's not because you think. You know, we followed them around with retargeting, and now they think, they don't know, so they think we're following them in their household and showing them the same pair of shoes 50,000 times that they took a look at and maybe bought, didn't buy, have interest, don't have interest. We have disrespected the user, and because of that, they feel like data and data privacy is a big issue. It's not what you can do, it's what you should do. And that's what we're trying to get to. So you can align this legally, right, by putting the right pieces in place. You can put your CMP in place, and you can make sure that first you're giving those users choice. And it looks something like this. You have a consent management platform that then goes to your tag manager. Your tag manager decides what's been consented and can pass to the places that you legally can pass that data to, which is part of your legalese inside of your site. It's not a complicated process, although it sounds like it. And there's lots of people out there today building CMPs, good CMPs, but that's the second stage of this piece after you've done your analysis of your data and you know what you need to do with it. This is our CMP. I just put it up here so you guys can see that you have the choice to be able to opt in or opt out or what it is. This is, you have different ways of doing the data. You've seen the cookie bars that ask you different questions, and there's different ways to do it. And there's really not a true set legal confirmation of what you have to do or not do. So a lot of it depends on what your legal teams tell you, etc. But you should have a CMP in place, regardless of the law, regardless of anything that's out there, so that you can give your consumers a choice. So now let's go to step number 3. You know, targeting, which is the big thing that you can do with programmatic media. It's what programmatic media was built for, to be able to trade that media quickly and at price points and target that media. So how are you going to do that going forward, right? Because think about this. This is what's happening in the market today, and it's not even concluded yet. Real-time bidding turns out to have a problem because of how the data is passed. So Google ends up talking about killing third-party cookies, and with Chrome and Google and everything else, third-party cookies are going to be killed. All right, so now everyone starts talking about what do we do, what do we do? Now the data laws come into effect. The advertiser talks to the agency. The advertiser starts to get their chief data officer and all these other pieces. They talk to their agency. They tell their agency, listen, you need to take care of this too for me, make sure I'm compliant. The agency goes, I don't know what to do. They start putting their pieces together. They go to their supply, which is Google or others, and they say to that supply, hey, you need to make sure that this is compliant because I'm buying the media from you. And the supply goes to the Googles of the world. They go to the publisher and say, you need to make sure you're 100% compliant, and I'm going to sign contracts with you that all data passed is compliant. All that's fine from a legal standpoint. But the reality is, we just showed 68% of the data that's being passed isn't clean, it's dirty. It's like contracting for fresh water all over the world and then never checking the water to find out if it's clean or not. Just passing it on to the consumer and say, drink it. I have contracts that say it's clean, but it's not. So what we need to do is we need to look at this whole equation in a different way. And we've been doing that for the last 2 years in building this compliant media, so we can give you some insights of what you need to do. For 10 years, if you've seen me speak, you've heard me talk about first-party data. First-party data, first-party data. But here's the problem. We were lazy. Nobody wanted to go collect their first-party data. They didn't want to go through the processes because they could buy third-party data and third-party data and third-party data. But the reality is, all results will show you that first-party data outperforms third-party data 10 to 1. Why 10 to 1? Well, because the third-party data guys are taking the first-party data or the real data and they're creating a look-alike around it that makes it 10 times bigger. So you're getting so far away from the base of the data that's real. If you look at buying third-party data in Brazil today and you want to look at auto shoppers, people looking for automotive, you can see 20 million people in some of these areas of 20 million people, they will tell you, are looking for autos. It's not true. It's just not true. Brazil sells less than 3 million autos an entire year. Less than 1.25% of the population buys an auto. But yet they'll tell you there's 20 million people looking for them. If 20 million people were looking to buy autos in Brazil, you'd have every manufacturer in the world putting plants here, including Rolls-Royce, right? It's pure numbers. So first-party data is the concentration. So third-party data is going away? Fine. Concentrate on first-party. There's not enough first-party, but you need to go out and find additional ways because it's 10 times more valuable. Second piece, we work with Peer 39, but there's other guys out there, but we really like these guys, on contextual data. Contextual data is becoming key to everything you're doing out in the market today. Why is it key? It's key because it can be layered in for all kinds of things, including brand safety and other factors. But what it does is it is cookieless. So you can overlay your first-party data, your contextual data, and you can create these segments that will perform extremely well for you in the marketplace. So we've been doing that. We've been running contextual for a little over a year. We have lots of results. If anybody has an idea of what they're looking for, we're happy to share some of that with them. So finally, step number 4. How do you activate the media in a good, conscious way, right? And that takes multiple steps. First, you got to go out and find supply. The supply, we use Xander. Xander's got a new product in the marketplace that if you haven't seen it, you should take a look at it. It's their curated product. It has massive reach, right? Incredible amount of great media coming through it. But it also uses ads.txt, which gives it better brand safety, prevention of fraud. You can work within that to whitelist and blacklist and do whatever you need to in order to make the media work for you. What we do with it, we actually, on the SSP side, put the data, media, and format together to create deal IDs, which has been very unique in the world. We're the first guys to do that. We do that because we can control the data. We can create a compliant media product in that way. But we get our supply, a big portion of our supply today is coming from the Xander guys. So end game. The end game and what the future holds, actually we're doing right now. It's just not very prevalent. We're doing it in Europe, we're doing it in the US, and we believe that others will follow in this end game. So we start with the data safety index. Make sure, if you get anything out of this presentation, that you go and track and look at how your data flow is. Because I guarantee you probably have something that's not right there. Go from there to the CMP, to the tag manager, to your private DMP and CDP customer data. They're the same. It's just a different way of naming it, private DMP. Goes from there to the SSP, and then to the deal ID, and then programmatically brought through DSP. You don't need to know all the terms. You don't need to know how all of it works. You can participate in one or all of these things. Ultimately, what we're doing today is we're creating something that is compliant media that can be bought, can be guaranteed that you're within all data laws worldwide. That's what I think the end game is. That's where our company's focused. Hopefully, from what you heard today, you got some insights into things you might be doing. We have a relationship with the WFA. That relationship is with their 120 advertisers. Senor Destri Lobo, or Mr. Wolf as us gringos call him, he and I are talking about how we might be able to offer up something that would help you have a data safety index, those participants in the MMA, and we'll be getting back to you with that later. Thank you very much for your time. Here's my email address if anybody would like to reach out to me. I'm a guy whose career is over. I'm an old guy in this industry, but I love the industry. I love to talk about it. I love to help people get better in it if I can. I love to hear other people's point of view. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have interest. Thanks a lot.